Hey everybody, welcome to Insta Live Conversation with Mama Cara, and I got the magical Mama Gina around here somewhere. Look who it is! Me and Gina! Hi!
Hi, friends.
We will, hi!
So here's something that I've been doing lately that feels really good. So wherever you're at, and I think just angle this up. You can do this sitting or you can do this standing, but just to show what I'm doing, I'm going to stand up. So take your hands and overlap, separate your thumbs out, and then just let your fingers stack. Whether the left hand comes on top of the right or the right hand comes on top of the left, naturally, just let that sort of land wherever it feels intuitive. And then take the thumbs and go the other way. Whatever's the opposite. So if you have your right fingers on top of your left, put your left thumb on top of your right. And you're creating this tension, this weave in the hands. It's sort of like this triangular weave, and you can feel that tension. And once you've found that spot, just inhale your hands up. And really hold and find that stretch, using the tension within the hands of that weaving to add sort of length and tension down the arms, opening up through the ribs. Using your breath to just create more space to maybe discover something that's tight and holding. And then to release it with your exhale. That tension in the hands is creating something that I like to call dynamic position, which can activate a sense of the edges, of the skin, of the air, of all the different points of contact where we're in dynamic opposition with our environment, that we can feel ourselves and feel our edges and kind of feel that contact and that pressure of what's holding us here and what's holding us together. And you can just get all creative with it. Celebrating the pressure, the contrast, the weavings. And then when it's complete, just bring your palms together and slowly and quietly draw into your heart. Yeah, what is the invitation with Little Shepherd's Nature Lab specifically? There's a few layers of invitation. There's the layer of invitation that is to local families to be part of this parent cooperative, private club, nature school where kids from the age of 3 to 18 can drop in with their bodies and with each other to build and garden and grow and be creative and expressive and have music and embodiment and social emotional skill building in real time in a really natural and sort of beautifully wildly renegade environment, because our entire concept is about resource consciousness, and we're reclaiming space on what used to be a horse ranch. For 100 years, it was a horse ranch, and for the last 3 years, it's even been just kind of fallow. So all the spaces we're coming into to create an outdoor classroom, we're starting with like a pile of rubbish, in a horse corral, like with weeds everywhere. So the second layer of invitation is to all of the families that are trying to find a way out of the public schools and trying to navigate homeschooling or private charter schooling or all these different options, and particularly in places where for various reasons of mandates or whatever else, just the options feel really limited. And California is one of those places where the options feel so limited. Like really, it's like, oh, you're either totally going by the fat book of regulations and mandates, or you're just on your own to homeschool. And we're going to also try to make that difficult for you if possible. So, and homeschooling in and of itself is difficult if that, again, is just more isolation. Because now instead of having the support of teachers and a classroom and other students where you can just drop your child off and then go to work, you're now also in charge of your child's education as well as everything else that you're trying to provide for your child. And so it's an impossible task. Like it's ridiculous. Like I'm so amazed by the moms who do it. And I have friends who are homeschooling their kids and they're kicking ass. and they're a stay-at-home mom and they're doing it. I'm not wired for that personally, so I needed to create a school alternative. Um, so the invitation is to look at what we're doing as a demonstration, to get ideas, to get inspiration, especially because we're doing everything with reclaimed and donated materials and with volunteer effort, to then have something that is owned and managed by the people for whom it serves, like the people that it belongs to are actually the people that own it together. So it models a lot of regenerative approaches that are relevant in society in terms of how we create our economies, how we create our organizations, how we live on land, how we use land, how we use the space that we're in on Earth. So those are some of the invitations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just really appreciate that conversation of how we use land. And this really bare bones, you're just starting with what is currently there and working with that versus, needing to get government stimulus money or money from somewhere else to infuse. And that inviting multiple hands, inviting everyone to the table to co-create really creates a sense of co-ownership and stewardship. So thank you for being a demonstration of how to do that. And as I was saying earlier when we're on Insta Live, it's super inspirational for me to watch your journey at the start of COVID, you're just knowing like you need to get out of these structures that aren't serving us, leases, 4 walls inside a house, that very small group of people. You were living with another mom and her 2 kids. You had each other at least, but it's still very isolating. And you knew you needed to create something else for your family to thrive. And you've held this vision of a mama bear sanctuary, of the land becoming available, not needing to own the land, knowing that it as you were saying, that the earth, us as one whole connected unit, wants us to come together and reclaim this regenerative sovereignty, right? This relationship that is very harmonic and sustainable and in tune with what is versus trying to force something, whether it's an actual building, an actual structure, or a curriculum, or
Yeah, and to let that journey be its own emergent curriculum.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's so exciting to me. Like, that's so exciting. Like, that is the nature, I feel, of true education, right? On that emergent edge, what is here? What is alive? Who's here? What's the energy that's alive in this moment? I'm responding to that. Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah.
But you do have a team of other people, educators, that you worked with this summer during the summer camp, right? So there is intention for structure and how you'll hold it. Can you talk a little bit about that and the flow?
Absolutely. And that's a really big piece, because it's not just like a constant loosey-goosey, like, and really what we're doing is we're creating a balance point, an intersection between structure and spontaneity, between form and flow, between the yin and the yang. It's like that ultimate like balancing of energies, so that the container that results has space for movement to happen organically, but that movement is governed by a structure that keeps everything coherent. So our umbrella for coherence is this key word of regeneration. We're modeling a regenerative approach to education, economy building, and community building. Well, what is regenerative? Fundamentally, in terms of, which it's really kind of taking off in this lane of agriculture, the term regenerative agriculture. So what that means is that you have a closed loop system. So your inputs and your outputs create a closed loop system, and then the whole thing nets positive for energy. So it's producing by just cycling in its own little self without needing a bunch of other inputs, it's actually generating and producing abundance. And it's really quite different from most of the way things are designed in our society.
Totally. So if we think of education, education is not a closed loop system. As it's sold in most public arenas today around the world, it's a system that people buy into, or people are paid to teach in. Parents maybe pay taxes that supports it, but either way, people put in and they expect to take out. But there's that loop is missing, that closed loop system where, but I'm actually thinking of an example, and this is one thing about public education in the United States versus, let's say, in Japan, that I find striking. And this idea that there's a custodian that cleans up after you, and that you can just leave your stuff wherever you put it, and somebody's going to clean it up for you, versus in Japan and other cultures where it's really important to contribute to the whole. The idea is that we're all equal caretaker, and there's no one person that does that job. And I actually apply that form of regenerative education to my parenting and with my child, because this idea that anyone is helping me as mama in the house is erroneous. That house, our domicile, our school, this is all of ours. This is a collective entity that requires contribution from each part so that it continues to grow. And that's that loop that you're talking about, right?
Yeah, that's a huge piece. And the other thing that kind of helps it really turn in real time, where everyone's engaged, and because of that, there's really this like movement that encompasses the whole, is that currently in the traditional education system, the children are the end user. All the education is just like going into the children, and now the children are the end user. So now we're going to test the children with standardized tests. Did you learn what you're supposed to learn? Okay, good. Here's the next thing to learn. And then the output is like when you then get into college. So the mark of success of your education is that you've now gotten into college so that you could go do more education. And then the mark of success in college is that you can graduate college and get a job so that you can make money, so that you can participate in this still extractive system that's driving itself right into the ground, because it's blowing through all of the resources that we have on this planet that are actually sustaining life. So the regenerative model basically says the children are not in and of themselves the end user of an end of the line, straight line situation. Actually, because it's a circle, if we input into the children, let's say a soil scientist comes and does a workshop with the kids about how to increase soil biology and build topsoil to sequester carbon and reduce global warming. The children get that information, and then they immediately integrate it into something that they can then produce, turn around and share with their community, with their parents, with their neighbors. So it actually goes into the children, and then the children are the voice and the conduit to send it right back into the community. It's not like this is some information that's just stored in the children until they graduate college and then become active contributors to society. Like we are recognizing that they're active contributors now. And how do we empower them today to have their impact and their voice in this turning wheel of collective effort to care for this land and this experience that we're sharing together as human bodies and human beings, as families, as schools, and ultimately then as organizations. I think these kids are going to be much better equipped to contribute to a job, when they've already felt their own potency of their impact and their contribution. They come in with a totally different sense of their value.
Completely. And it's dangerous, really. What we're talking about is dangerous because
it's super dangerous.
It is, because people who I think are raised this way are going to continue to create something new, perhaps. Not that there's anything new under the sun, but less of the old static, stationary, crumbling from the inside. And for me, it's just that idea that that we're consumers, right? Our children are the the end repository of all the information, all the knowledge that the administrators and the educators have taken in their lives. And this idea that education is somehow just taking information in and almost purging it, which is completely, it's clear cutting our innate curiosity and drive to just know about our world and the way things naturally work. It's eradicated that desire. That for me is really why I don't want to add my child to a more public system. And I want more of what you're doing and what you're creating there on the land.
Yes. It works in small units of energy. It works in small focused groups in hyper local ways that account for what are those immediate resources. So it's absolutely a thing to just remember that we get to do it for ourselves, and then find the people around us who also want to do it, and then to dive into the adventure, and then to share resources like in this format where we're virtual, anyone can watch at any time. You know, the transmission is there, but it's just there so that it can be a little touch point or a little nourishment or a little inspiration, versus like, come over here, leave your what you would do otherwise, you know, and like apply this exact formula and model, and like, I don't know, and it just creates more of this severing and more of the clear cutting of our own engagement in our lives. I see a really deep correlation between the soil conditions of this planet and the soul conditions of this planet. And in fact, the only difference between soil and soul is you and I.
You know, say I'm wanting to co-create something similar where I'm at. Are there a few tips? You know, I might not know where to begin, and it might seem a little overwhelming. And just to share, I mean, this was a seed dream you've had inside your body mind for probably your whole life. But since I've known you over a decade now, and you know, we've kind of had on the second tail of your motherhood journey, we've been enmeshed in that, the wonderful journey of being mothers together. And so for 2 years, you've really been holding this vision, and it's been 2 months that you've been on the land. So, you know, the realistic expectation of doesn't happen overnight. So we can begin with seed dreams, planting seed dreams. And I'm curious if you could just give a little more context to some of the seeds, like what are some active steps I could take right now to start moving in the direction for where you find yourself?
Yeah. It starts with an invitation to explore the conversation, to see who you'd really want to spend your time with in terms of, you know, a cooperative model of, you know, even if you have a designated teacher, you know, like, who do you want to work with? What families resonate with your values? Find those families that resonate with your values, and then talk about what you could do together. Maybe there's already something going on that you can drop into, but just finding kind of the like-minded value systems right now is so important, because that's going to govern how people want to spend their time and their energy, and what they want to talk about, and what they kind of want to be immersed in. So you find those resonant people that have kids that, you know, that maybe the kids kind of like to play together already, you know, and so just, it can start with play groups. It can start with just little like mama meetups and things like this. If you decide to get serious about starting something, then my biggest piece of advice would be to see it as an experiment. The reason why we're called Little Shepherd's Nature Lab is because we want to really emphasize that we're just trying this on together. There's no one that knows exactly how it is all going to work, and how all these moving pieces are going to land, and all the different dynamics. And, you know, there's not some sort of, again, like precise formula, but there is a vision, there's a plan, and then within that, we're trying the things that we think will work. And then we're being available to pivot in real time as we get that feedback from experience as we go, so that it's really being guided and shaped by who's there actually, and not just the story in one person's head. Yeah.
I know that one. I know that one well. So I love that that modeling of and this valuing of science, of trial and error. And that's something with my almost 8-year-old son that I bring up a lot of, you're going to fail a lot. We're going to fail a lot. Yes, I fail a lot because we're going to keep trying. It's all about trial and error and just see. And you, Gina, you are the person who actually, when I think of this statement, it's your face that emerges, is like, just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. You know, you had said that to me years ago. And so it's just something I'm always playing with, like, all right, just throwing putty at the wall, and that playfulness, right? Like that is the place we want to create, especially any type of educational system for our children, from that place of innocent playfulness that's just like, what's here? What can we do? You know, oh, that didn't work. Oh, that fell down. Oh, that was messy. Perfect.
Yeah. And to recognize that that is, like you said, an education versus this assumption or a program that what qualifies as a valid education is this exact structured thing that has its exact structured outcomes, that has its exact structured schedule, that has exactly this certain people in these certain places that don't move from their roles. And everything is buttoned down tight. And because of that, we get our exact result, which is the child that gets the highest AT score and goes on to perform in these exact ways, right? So it's a total, because if we have that idea in our minds, we'll probably not try anything new. We will assume that we're not going to be able to reproduce something that precise, and we will be correct. If we're going to go off-road and like build something together, it's not going to feel that precise. And if we're always measuring up to that expectation, we will feel defeated, discouraged. How do we do this? This isn't, you know, and so it's really important to think of it as play and to see that as being valuable.
Yeah, and just when you were describing that rigidity, I could feel constriction in my body. It felt heavy. It didn't feel good. I didn't want to invest. I wasn't inspired. Just in your describing that model, you know, as artists, which we both are, I'm sure you'll agree with me when I say this, it doesn't seem sane to my body mind to do the same thing, 20, 40 hours, the exact same thing every week, each day, especially with children. And there's just a real organic improvisation that's absolutely lacking. And it's created this perfectionist mentality, certainly. But I also see it as really snuffing out just creative genius. And everyone is born a creative genius. I know that in my heart. It's conditioned out of us, and it has everything to do with the way we're raised. So again, I'm just so grateful you're doing what you're doing and that we're having this conversation, because that's the world that we want to proliferate, is a world where we're being honored and seen for exactly who we are, which is being born creative geniuses, and whatever weaknesses and strengths we each have, and we each come into this world with.
Yeah. As an example of how we're fostering that, the after school program, which is for grades 1 through 12, so it's wide open for a mixed age group. We have an enrollment capacity of 12 for this program. So we end up with a smallish group of kids of different ages. The project for the after school program, I have this horse trailer, and I will give it to the kids and say, okay, the grown-ups will help you, whatever you say you need. But your task is to renovate this trailer, turn it into a farm stand, and operate the farm stand. It's your business. You stock it with what you want to produce here on the ranch. We've got gardens, we've got chickens, we've got pomegranates galore. We have the capacity to do wild crafting tinctures. We can make books. We could do nature crafts. Like, the kids can decide how they want to stock their farm stand, and then they can just run this little business as a model. You know, how many different ideas, skill sets, expressions, interests get to be discovered in the course of something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me, have you read the Anastasia series? the book series called Anastasia. It's
Is that the woman in the wild with a baby that like sleeps inside of a bear?
Yeah, yeah, I believe
Yes.
so. In the forests of Russia, in
Yeah.
that area. And so it's about this woman who basically lives in the wild, and this man who's he's a salesman who lives in the city, and it's his experience is meeting this wild woman who becomes a mother, and he's very much affected by this experience. But one of the follow-up books of Anastasia is creating a school, and what you're saying with the farm stand is exactly a model in the book, where the kids are given some land, that the tools are given to them, and the adults are like, create what you want to create, and the kids naturally organize themselves. That's the thing that I love. I think us adults are over involved in our children's lives. We need to back up, and we need to let them organize themselves in multi-age groups. And the older kids always take a leadership role, and they'll help the little kid. I mean, it's so brilliant, right? So in this book, Anastasia, it shares this model, and it's saying like, please, earth citizens, please do this. So again, like, thank you for listening, Gina. I can't wait to visit. We'll be back at the end of the month, but on August 13th, which is coming up really, really soon, you do have like an open
open house. We're having a big open house, which is meant to be a little ironic because our house is all outdoors in nature, so there's no actual house, but it's the space is open. We'll be giving tours of our outdoor classrooms. We'll be talking about all of these different philosophies and ideas that are part of what we're demonstrating in the lab, so that people can let that marinate on themselves and see what may sprout. And of course, we'll have live music and snacks. In fact, we invite parents to be present as much as they want to. Parents can volunteer, parents can just come into the classroom and just be part of what's happening with the kids. There's no pressure to like teach or do anything like that. It's just that, we want to educate whole families. So we are with the kindergarten program, we're Monday through Friday from 9:30 to 3:30. The after school program, we're Monday through Thursday from 3:30 to 5:30. And if parents want to come drop off their kids and then squirrel themselves away in a space where they have access to Wi-Fi so they can work remotely without having to commute back and forth twice in the day, that's also an option. And we're just hoping we can just grow it all the way up.
Awesome. And you have 3 daughters, and your youngest would fit in the kindergarten group. But definitely not, maybe your oldest will be there in the afternoons. And I'm curious about Lily. Talk to me about the girls, and how is that balancing motherhood with everything you're doing?
Well, Lily, at this point, because Little Shepherd's Nature Lab is not built out enough to have her do 2nd grade in this kind of full-time comprehensive alternative way, she's still in public school for 2nd grade, and then she would be part of our after-school program this year. So that's still an area where my world is split. Even if I'm moving in this direction, the momentum that I have is enough to where I can fold Rose into it and start Rose in kindergarten in this thing that we're creating. And that I just sort of have to keep going and like trust that I'll be able to fold Lily in more and more and more as time goes on, while also keeping that continuity for Rose. I'm also in a position where I'm needing to sort of prove to their dad that this is valid, that this model is something that he would want Rose to continue in, or that he would allow Lily to exit public school to then be part of. Like, I have to prove that this is valid, and it's this constant sort of thing. Again, kind of circling back to what we talked about on the Instagram, is that it's like, it's not just that I'm single parenting, it's that I'm single parenting and having to defend my values to an antagonistic co-parent who's constantly like undermining it's the exact opposite of what you want as a mom,
Yeah.
So heartbreaking and exhausting.
Totally. Yeah, and yet you're still doing it. Even though.
Even though, but that's what motherhood is about, still
Yeah.
doing it, even though, because there, it doesn't stop. The children are there and they need what they need. So it is the ultimate, whatever about the invention is mother is the necessity, or no, necessity is the mother, but mother is the necessity of invention. So it's kind of like all wrapped up in there. But we have this need to provide and keep us going through whatever inventions are necessary, whatever innovations are necessary to keep adapting.
Yeah. And I believe you're gonna have a high school graduate really soon after this year. Or
Yeah, weirdly enough, Kayana is going into her senior year of high school this week.
Oh my God, this
And
week! Wow, Kayana.
yeah, but you know what? It's incredible. Even though I feel like I kind of made all the mistakes with her because I didn't know. I had her when I was 23. I didn't know at all about, I didn't have the worldview. I didn't have the personal inner worldview. I didn't have what I have now to work with. And still, even though there's so many things that I look back on and I'm just like, oh my God, Kayana, I so blew it. I totally blew it with this kid. But as I've continued on my journey and I'm staying true to who I am, and I keep showing up for her and just being present with her and not running a program on her the way that I was treated as a teenager, which was 100% programmatic. I get to be super impressed and blown away by her awareness. And she sees what I'm doing and what I'm trying to do. And I share my journey with her. And she's getting it. She's getting it not because I'm trying to force her or change her. She's getting it because I'm doing what I feel like is important and not being caught up on what I didn't do perfectly in the past or what I didn't do perfectly yesterday.
Beautiful. One of my mama's sister friends, Jamie, had said to me that repair is everything. And it is everything. Like we're constantly making mistakes. Not that there is such a thing as a mistake, but this need to keep coming back and saying, oh wow, I'm sorry. Oh wow, mom really messed up. And I just know from my personal experience, that's nothing I've ever had in my, when I was a child and the relationships I had with the adults. So it's such a gift that we get to give that to our children. And yeah, Kayana, I of course she's getting it. Of course, you're being the change. And holding that steady, even as everything, whether it's the world or your relations with baby daddies, all of that is in absolute flux, but you're holding that center that is immutable in lots of ways, right? I mean, there might be a little shift in there, but the heart, the heart of who you are and what you do is just, and as I've known you, you've got such a brilliant gaze on love as just true north, love with a capital L, not for this singular person's enjoyment, but this collective whole. How do we radiate in something that's really for the highest and best for everyone? So I've been watching you do it for over a decade, and again, I'm just so blessed and privileged to call you a friend, a mama sister friend.
Yeah. I would be happy to send the PDF of our parent handbook to anyone who requests it. Our parent handbook breaks down the value system of the nature lab. It breaks down the structure of the nature lab. It breaks down our emergent curriculum, our daily rhythm, our facilitators. Without being excessively specific, it is that structure that we're working with that allows for all the organic flow within. And that
Awesome.
is something that I would be happy to share.
Okay, great. So just drop us your email address in a comment line or in a direct message, and we will get you a copy of Gina's PDF. Or what's the exact name of your PDF again?
Little Shepherd's Nature Lab Parent Handbook.
It's the parent handbook for the lab. So for how you can feel inspired and get some ideas to create this in your own locality, wherever you are around the world. Gina and I both are very much wanting to be of service to proliferate more of what we've talked about during this time together all over our planet. So thank you, Gina, for your time. And thank you to anybody and everybody who is watching and has tuned in.
Well, I do want to say something, which is that I've also been so incredibly inspired by you, Cara, and witnessing you move through your journey of loss and how you regenerated, and not just regenerated, but like actively responded to that experience in real time as it was unfolding. And then you have chosen to do the bravest possible thing, which is to strike out into the world with your son, to leave the country, to leave what's familiar, to just go on the road and to just have new experiences together. I cannot wait to see Kahlo as an adult, who he is and what he will be in the world because of who he already is now and the experiences that he's having with you and who he gets to see as his mom. You're the most incredible, strong, like force of nature. And you were back when we first were dancing together and in 2010, but the richness and the depth now, and even just in this conversation and hearing you and feeling your reflections, your questions, and how you're leaning into it. I mean, you just you're on it. You're on it. And I'm so excited that you're speaking into it and that you're building and that you're right. You have the book out. And I just hope that these conversations, these resources, your book, like it just needs to get into the hands of as many mamas as possible, because at the end of the day, the only mental health crisis is the isolation, because together we can work through anything. Together, when we show up together, whether it's on the Zoom call or in person, we can co-regulate our nervous systems. We can feel safe, we can feel seen, and that just calms everything down. Everything down that is not wrong for acting up. It's not wrong. It's your intelligence that's saying, that's feeling anxious or depressed. That's your intelligence working for you to tell you that your container is not supportive.
Right. Yeah, that it's not
So
normal.
it is together that we redefine.
Yeah, and it's not sane, right? That's like one of the biggest pieces for me around our collective mental health, is that it's not sane what we've inherited, and the world that we're trying, the systems that have been in play for thousands of years are unjust, unethical, and not sane, not normal. So for us, all the ways that you just discussed, feeling isolated, alone, depressed, angry, rage, full of rage, all of it is information. It is our body's intelligence telling us, and it's not us. So we're here, Gina and I, both to be of service to our planet, to each other, to other mama sister friends. Reach out, let us know how we can support you in co-creating a world that just feels more loving and gentle and kinder